I'm heading up first, so make sure you have dinner ready by the time I get back. As soon as he returned, he raised his voice upon seeing the empty table. Sorry. I went shopping on my way home today, so I got a bit late preparing. But I'm tired too, you know. Sign. Don't compare my job to your sedentary office work. You're a woman, so it should be obvious that even if you work, you're supposed to take care of everything at home. The kind and gentlemanly husband had turned into an abusive man as soon as we got married. Do you understand? A plain and ugly woman like you is just a nuisance to society. At least devote yourself to death for me, since I deigned to marry you. Despite such words, I endured for one reason only. To protect her daughter, Emma. My husband, who wanted me to obey him, would likely hurt Emma or even harass me to take custody if I resisted. One day, during those hard days when I had no choice but to follow my husband. Hey. My mistress is pregnant. It's a boy. Excitedly, he thrust a divorce paper in front of me. If Emma had been a boy, I could have kept you as just a trophy wife. Sorry, but you're no longer needed. Take Emma and leave. What? You're throwing away Emma too? Don't make it sound so bad. I'll pay child support. You take good care of Emma. Relieved, tears came to my eyes. Finally, I could escape this life. Is that so? Pretending to be sad, I signed the divorce papers. My husband was satisfied, thinking everything went his way. Seeing his face made me suppressed emotions surge. I thought, don't ever think you have a happy future ahead of you. I am Jessica Holmes, a 34-year-old president's wife. That sounds good, but in reality, I am a part-time office worker at a local factory. Living with my husband Scott, who is 4 years older, and our 3-year-old daughter, Emma. I met Scott through a coworker who asked me to make up numbers at a group dating event. As I neared my late 20s, I no longer felt the rush or expectation for marriage. So, I thought I would just be helpful to my juniors looking for a relationship at this group dating. Hey, what are your hobbies? You've been smiling the whole time. But you haven't talked much about yourself since you got here, have you? Huh? While nodding along to everyone's conversation, my husband approached me. Had he realized that I wasn't seeking a relationship? I like driving. It clears my mind even when I have troubles. How about you? Yes. I guess I enjoy visiting cafes. I like reading, so I bring a book. While talking, I suddenly felt embarrassed by my mundane hobby. Scott wasn't particularly handsome but looked stylish, friendly, and seemed like a cheerful type who would be popular. Really. I also stop by various cafes when I drive. Like ones with ocean views. In the woods, or those in old traditional houses. You know what? I think I also like visiting cafes. That's nice. You seem to know a lot of stylish cafes. If you like, would you like to come with me next time? I've started wanting to show you all my favorite places. After that, we started going on drives and visiting cafes together. Being in sales, Scott was personable and kept the conversation lively, making our time together very enjoyable. On our third date, he told me he was soon going to quit his job at the printing company to work at his family's business. You know, my dad runs a metalworking factory. I always tried to escape that work. But my mom passed away 2 years ago. I've finally decided I have to take over. That's great. Your dad must be proud, right? Scott blushed and nodded, then straightened up after a moment. After several dates, I've come to appreciate your modest and kind nature. If possible, would you consider a relationship with marriage in mind? With a serious look, he formally proposed, and I had no hesitation in my response. Yes, if you're okay with me. Blushing, he quietly exclaimed and yes. His cute response was very endearing. Even after we started dating, he remained a gentleman, making sure to drop me off at a time that wouldn't worry my parents. Before we even introduced him, my parents felt reassured, and our relationship went smoothly. His parents were very welcoming at his family home. They had been worried because he had never brought a woman home before. Eventually, when we visited his parents, I started cooking dinner for 3. Right now, a friend asked me to design a gardening shelf. Oh? Can your factory make something like that? How about something like this, for example? Even without my husband, my father-in-law and I would get excited discussing ideas for fun products we could make at the factory. I have always loved classes where I could create things, like arts and crafts and technology. My father-in-law always considered the potential of the factory and never hesitated to try new things. If you marry this guy, Jessica, why don't you work with us? Wouldn't it be fun to create something together? Besides, he's still in training, so I'd like you to support him nearby. Hey, Dad. I haven't even proposed yet, don't jump ahead. Because I would be really happy if Jessica became my daughter-in-law. Such a good girl isn't easy to find. With my father-in-law's encouragement, we got married a year later. At my husband's request, we had our wedding overseas, doubling as our honeymoon. But my father-in-law and my family also came, and it was a truly happy time. After the marriage, I started working as an office worker with them. And the 3 of us managed the factory together. Jessica, I hear you and the president are thinking up something interesting again? I'm thinking about introducing the fun of the factory on the internet. I'm studying it right now. She's a reliable head of planning, right? I was loved by the executive director Robert and the craftsmen. And the office was always filled with everyone's smiles. I'm really glad I got married. I truly thought so. The only concern was that my husband didn't show his face at the office much. Perhaps because the work was tough. After the marriage, we looked for a new home near my in-laws. I had considered living with my father-in-law from the start, but my husband had other ideas. Dad is still healthy, so let's live just the 2 of us for at least the first year. I was thrilled by his unexpected suggestion. I thought we were so in love. But reality was not as sweet as I had imagined. When he came home from work, my husband was always in a bad mood. At first, it was just skiing and sighing. I'm tired today. Since you're home first, at least have dinner ready by the time I get back. As days passed, he started to grumble and make sarcastic remarks to me. Oh? Sorry. I went shopping on the way home today, so I was a bit late. But I'm tired too, you know. Sigh. Don't compare your sitting office job to my work. You're a woman, so it's only natural for you to handle all the household chores. Even if you work, right? Is this what they call a domineering husband? However, it was clear that my husband was accumulating stress at work. He was learning about all aspects of the company's work by starting with the craftsmen in the factory. Damn. That old man. He yells at me just for one mistake. When I become the president, I'll fire him on the spot. Yeah. It must be tough being yelled at even when you're trying your best. Hey, why don't you come to the office to chat? It might cheer you up. What? What do you know? Don't talk as if you understand. It had been only about a year and a half since he started his president training. So my husband was still not used to many things and was often scolded by the skilled craftsmen. Living with my father-in-law might have prevented him from releasing stress at home. I felt that our current life was good for him too. Sorry for always taking it out on you, Jessica. Thank you for always listening to my complaints. On weekends, my husband would apologize as if he had come to his senses. And accompany me on drives and cafe tours like before we were married. I could bear with it, thinking he trusted me enough to be himself. Until I got used to work, I was serious about being an outlet for my husband's stress. But that might have been a mistake. His verbal abuse only escalated afterward. Nearly a year into our marriage, just as I was getting the hang of my job, I found out I was pregnant. My father-in-law was thrilled and cried with joy. My husband was happy too, but I was bothered by his comments that he only wanted a son. I hope it's a boy. That would be the best way to honor my parents. And the company would be secure too. It doesn't matter which, boy or girl. Your father will be happy either way. I pray that my husband's wish would come true. But I was anxious about the possibility of having a girl. Luckily, I didn't have much morning sickness, so I decided to work until just before the birth. As my due date approached, my father-in-law said to me when we were alone in the office, "Jessica, thank you for marrying into our family. I want to say this because it's such a time. Scott has a good facade but struggles to build deep relationships with people. I want you to cover for his shortcomings from now on." Yes, of course. If Jessica is at the center of both our company and home, everything will surely be all right. Please take good care of Scott and the company. As the birth of the new life neared, my father-in-law might have started thinking about generational change. I was glad to feel trusted by him. His factory had already become very important to me. A month later, a little girl was born a bit earlier than expected. Jessica, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for giving birth to a lovely granddaughter. He rushed to the hospital right after the birth and thanked me many times. Seeing how thrilled he was with the birth of my child, I couldn't help but cry. Perhaps because my father-in-law was so moved. My husband didn't complain about having a girl, and I was truly relieved. However, once our daughter was born, my husband started going out to drink after work. At first, he said, "The crying is noisy, and I can't relax at home." But when I returned to work 6 months postpartum, his reasoning changed. Seeing the same faces at home and at work doesn't let me unwind. Gradually, he went out drinking more often, and came home later. Even when he went out without telling me and came home to find his dinner not ready, he would disparage me. "You have it easy, don't you? All you need to do is take care of the kid instead of preparing my meals. It would have been nice if you had told me. I thought you were going to eat out today. I'll get it ready right away." Lately, my husband has been venting his frustrations on me instead of just complaining about work. Perhaps it has something to do with our child being a daughter. "You're not of any use at work, just answering phones and getting paid for it." It's audacious. Maybe if you were prettier, it could have brought in more clients. But you're below average in looks. Hey. I am doing my job properly, so stop saying things like that. Do you understand? A plain and ugly woman like you is just a nuisance to society. At least devote yourself to death for me, since I deigned to marry you. Useless, only able to give birth to girls. What I thought was a traditional husband has now transformed into a verbally abusive man. Perhaps he's upset that I get along not only with my father-in-law and the craftsman but also with Robert, the deputy manager. Robert is a person my father-in-law introduces as my right hand. Since my father-in-law is very hands-on, Robert handles most of the external communications alone. I wish I could have an easy job like Robert soon. I wouldn't even need to learn these dirty jobs. I could start doing sales right away. I want to become president fast. All I can do is sigh. Before we got married, my husband, the salesman, seemed charming. But I never knew he took sales so lightly. Despite being the future president. Does he think he can manage the company without understanding its operations? Still, I thought everything would be fine as long as my strict father-in-law was around. And I believed my husband would change eventually. It was the winter when our daughter Emma turned 2. My father-in-law suddenly died of a heart attack. He had been fine the day before, walking around the neighborhood with Emma as part of their daily routine. In the morning, when my father-in-law didn't show up for work, my husband went to check on him and found him collapsed under the bed. My husband called an ambulance, but it was too late, and he passed away at the hospital. Why, so soon? The sudden event left both my husband and me scrambling until after the funeral. At the funeral, Emma stroked my forehead saying, there, as I finally began to cry. Holding Emma, I cried again, unsure how to explain her beloved grandfather's death. The death of my father-in-law was a shock in many ways. After the month memorial, when my husband had been president for a while, he said something outrageous. Hey, now that I'm president, I want you to quit the company. What? Why? Why? You really are stupid. I can't pay a salary to someone who's of no use to the company. From now on, your job is housekeeping and childcare. He had fired me. You should be thankful you got to marry me. You are a president's wife, after all. Also, I've decided to hire a beauty to replace you in the office, so don't worry. The smirk on his face disgusted me. I had suspected that the new secretary was his mistress. I thought, this might be hopeless. That was the first time I seriously considered divorce. Since becoming the so-called president's wife, our household had struggled financially. We used to share expenses, with my husband contributing 60% and me 40%. But even as a full-time homemaker, that ratio hadn't changed. We can't live like this. If you want me to focus solely on housework, then you need to pay all the living expenses. If that's not possible, then please let's just get a divorce. Huh? Who do you think you are? I'll decide if we get a divorce. Don't speak up, you're useless. And I saw his smirking face and had a bad feeling. If we divorce, I'll take custody of Emma. You're too stupid to raise her, and there are plenty of women who can replace a mother. I thought that a husband who wanted me to obey him might go as far as harassing me like that. There's no way I could hand over Emma to him for such reasons. Since she was born, my husband would yell, "Shut up," when she cried or push her hand away when she approached him in a bad mood. I was always worried that he might harm our daughter someday. Do you understand? A plain and ugly woman like you is just a nuisance to society. At least devote yourself to death for me, since I deign to marry you. With a trembling fist restrained by my other hand, I pleaded with my husband again. Then, please provide adequate financial support. Emma is already 3, right? Go out and work if you need to. That is if anyone would hire a useless person like you. Pleased with having belittled me, my husband burst into laughter. Even though you're at home more than I am, I'm the one paying more. Be grateful. Biting my lip, I could only nod in silence. For Emma's sake, to stay by her side, I had decided I must work and earn money. After my husband fell asleep, I decided to call my mother. I needed to organize my chaotic thoughts and wanted her to listen. Despite the sudden late-night call, my mother listened attentively, allowing me to finally fall asleep. The next day, my mother called me back. Can you come over the day after tomorrow, on Sunday? I have something to talk about. I didn't know what it was about, but staying at home was painful. So I decided to take Emma and visit my mother over the weekend. My husband had emailed saying, I'll be staying at my mistress's place over the weekend. so it shouldn't be a problem. Ever since he announced my firing, my husband had stopped hiding his mistress's existence. His logic seemed to be that since he had made me a president's wife, I had no right to complain. I had heard from a craftsman that Scott was having an affair with a girl he met at a bar. I never thought he would actually hire her as an office worker at our company. When Emma and I went back to my parents' house, my parents, my brother David, and my uncle Patrick were waiting in the living room. "Welcome back. Are you looking for a job? If you like, why not work part-time at my place? You can set your hours according to your schedule." "Really? Can I?" This unexpected proposal made me burst into tears. After a long time, I felt the warmth of human kindness again. Uncle Patrick is my father's brother and he runs his own company. Uncle and aunt had no children, and they had always cherished us sisters since we were little. Even now that we're adults, my aunt and I are close enough to go shopping and have lunch together. Did you know my sister's husband's company is one of our clients? You might know this, but it seems a bit risky since the previous owner passed away. I knew they were a client, but I haven't mentioned that. Since my father-in-law passed away, I don't understand much about the company. David is currently training to be the next president of my uncle's company. That's when I heard some shocking news. After the father-in-law passed away, in addition to employees who quit due to disagreements with the new president's policies, it seems that new hires are not lasting long, and the number of orders they can accept has decreased. Jessica's marital home has a long history with the previous generation. I want to support them, but if the quality drops, we might need to reconsider. I see. I have a little favor to ask you too. I asked my husband to keep it a secret that I would be working at my uncle's company. I spoke to Robert, the contact person at work, and asked him to keep it under wraps, as did my uncle. I hated the idea of being laughed at for a nepotistic hire by my husband. And I didn't want to be exploited using my uncle. Above all, I wanted to keep it as a trump card for when it was necessary. When I started working at my uncle's company, my husband eventually stopped contributing money to the house. Didn't I tell you to take care of the house? Now that you're working, you take care of the house expenses too. It seemed fun for him to see my face of despair. He was splitting his time and money between our home and his mistress's place. "I'll pay the rent, so don't worry." Even though I felt boiling anger, I couldn't say anything back. All I could do was prepare for divorce by recording his statements and actions in a diary. And I followed my husband after work to take pictures of him with his mistress as evidence. One day, nearly a year after I started working at my uncle's company, a turning point came. While I was preparing dinner, I heard loud footsteps from the entrance. "Hey. The mistress is pregnant. It's a boy." With that, my excited husband thrust the divorce papers in front of me. He had always wanted a boy to be his heir. Still, I was shocked to find out that he had even gotten his mistress pregnant. "If Emma had been a boy, I could have kept you as just a trophy wife. But now you're useless to me. Take Emma and leave." "What? You're planning to abandon Emma too? Don't say such horrible things. I'll at least pay child support. Take good care of Emma." I burst into tears of relief. Now I could finally escape this life. Okay. I pretended to be sad as I signed the divorce papers. My husband was pleased that things were going his way. Watching his face, long-suppressed emotions began to surge within me. I thought, "Don't think you have a happy future ahead of you." We agreed to discuss compensation later, and I kept the signed divorce papers. I immediately contacted my parents, and the next day, I left the house with Emma. 10 days later, we discussed compensation and child support at my parents' house. My husband came with his mistress. "I'm sorry I couldn't make your daughter happy. As compensation for the affair, we will pay an appropriate amount. My husband was good at keeping up appearances. So he smoothly agreed to the demands for compensation and child support. This is Mandy, my fiancée. She's now 15 weeks pregnant. As I run a business, I really needed a boy. I'm really sorry, ma'am. It's because I got pregnant with a boy that you're being pushed out. I was utterly disgusted by the smirking husband and the triumphant look on Mandy's face. Mandy, 25 years old, was an attractive and seductive woman, but she had a calculating look. How can people who enjoy looking down on others exist? So, the child support will be $400 per month. And the compensation will be $50,000 paid in one lump sum, right? Yes. I want to remarry and start a new life quickly. Can we prepare a notarized divorce agreement first? While my husband might want to restrict Emma for the sake of Mandy's unborn child, it actually worked in my favor. I wouldn't want to rely on Emma in the future. Understood. After preparing the notarized document, I'll file the divorce papers. The discussion went smoother than I expected, and I couldn't stop smiling. Finally, we're clear. What will you do now? Sorry, but I'm not letting it end here. I'll make that man see hell. After preparing the notarized document and signing it, we both agreed. After confirming the transfer of compensation from my husband, I promptly filed the divorce papers. My husband was eager to remarry, and it hadn't even taken 2 months. On the day the compensation was transferred, I called my husband. I've confirmed the transfer of the compensation. Thank you. It's going to be tough from now on, but good luck. Well, unlike me, you're capable, so you'll be fine. What? What are you talking about? Irritated by my sarcastic tone, my husband responded with a puzzled voice. Your company is losing employees, right? The craftsmen are quitting, and it seems the newcomers don't last. And now your sales are falling, aren't they? Did you hear that from Robert? His voice deepened, sounding more intimidating. Since I had already filed for divorce, I no longer needed to flinch at his tone. No. I'm working part-time at your company's major client. What? So what? What can a part-timer like you do about it? Are you stupid? That's why I've always said you're incompetent, but you still didn't get it? He laughed loudly, hurling insults at me like, that's why idiots are a problem. And, keep the jokes to your face. So, I waited for his laughter to subside before dropping the bombshell. I'm currently working at my uncle's company. What? He quieted down. Either his mind was racing, or it had come to a complete stop. You know, they kept giving us work because I was your wife. But now that we're divorced, there's no obligation anymore. It'll be tough. But you'll have to work hard on finding new clients. It seems after his father-in-law passed away, Scott had been arrogant with the clients, leading to fewer jobs. However, he had been barely managing because he still had the jobs from my uncle's company, which was a major client. Wait a minute. Uncle? But that company is supposed to be run by a woman president, right? Even over the phone, it was clear he was panicking, which was amusing. Yes. The lady took over the company from the predecessor. Uncle is the executive director and her right-hand man. They're a couple I admire. You're lying, right? You never mentioned anything like this before. If you had told me, I wouldn't have divorced you. Now it was my turn to laugh. I wanted to divorce you. That's why I didn't tell you. To protect Emma. As per the notarized document we agreed upon. Please never come near Emma again. But, oh. By the way, my brother will eventually succeed as president. Then, it will definitely be impossible for you to contract with us. The other end of the phone went silent. It seemed he was at a loss for words. Hey, please. I've been working properly. Speak to the president for me. We were husband and wife, weren't we? No, we're strangers now. You treated the employees poorly. You're the one who lowered the morale at the factory. The reduction in orders and the drop in product quality are all your fault. If your father saw the situation now, he would surely cry. And Robert said he's going to resign. If Robert leaves, it's really the end for you. Sorry for you. I said that and hung up without waiting for a reply from my husband. He called many times after that, but I never answered. David isn't guaranteed to be the next president, but that's a secret I accidentally let slip. I didn't think it would end there, but a few days later, Scott showed up at my parents' house with Mandy. Naturally, I had no intention of letting him see Emma. So I spoke to him through the chain-locked door. Jessica. Please, speak to the president for me. I got a notification yesterday that our contract is terminated. I know. After that, didn't all the employees except Robert say they wanted to quit? Scott was visibly unsettled, scratching his head with both hands. Please. Come back. I can't do it without you. Let's try again. I can't face my father even in death. It's impressive he could say such things in front of his remarried wife. Mandy looked at him with a bitter expression. They must have talked it over before coming. She had successfully stolen a husband and become the president's wife. But now she was clinging to her ex-wife due to poor management. I refuse. I'm useless, stupid, and incompetent, right? Besides, I wouldn't want anything to do with a harasser like you. I decided to hit him while he was down. And haven't you forgotten? The terms we agreed upon in the notarized document. You said it yourself, didn't you? After the divorce, we should never contact each other again. How much was the fine? As I spoke, his face rapidly turned pale. Meeting me would cost $10,000 in fines each time. Scott had boasted. He must have believed he was only hurting himself. Finally, I dropped another bomb. Oh, Mandy. I almost forgot. But I'll also be claiming damages for the affair from you. I think the lawyer will contact you. Since he'll soon be unable to pay, make sure you settle your own actions properly. What? Huh? The divorce is final, and it's over. I never said I wouldn't claim from you, did I? I just wanted to proceed with the divorce from him first. He never said not to claim from you either. Scott's face was turning from blue to white, but that was none of my concern. Watching him choke himself with his own arrangements was amusing to me. Please stop. I'm about to give birth. What should I do if the company goes bankrupt? This wasn't in my calculations. Well? I don't know. That's your problem. Every time you come here, your debt increases, so please never come again. You have an important heir about to be born, so keep up the fight without losing. I smiled sweetly and slammed the door shut. Behind the door, Mandy was still shrieking, but after a while, I could hear my husband soothing her and her sobbing, and then their presence faded away. Afterward, my husband's company faced financial difficulties as major clients withdrew their support. I thought it would go out of business, but ultimately, my husband decided to relinquish his shares and step down as president to keep the company going. This was probably the least he could do as atonement to his father. Robert took over as the new president and renegotiated contracts with my uncle's company. It seems that the craftsmen who had left were also coming back. And the factory was regaining its vitality. With Robert becoming the president, it appears that some clients who had left have returned. Scott and Mandy divorced shortly after that. Probably fed up with Scott's verbal abuse and full-on harassment under stress. Mandy didn't wait for the birth, she went back to her parents' home, as I heard from Robert. Mandy's parents paid her compensation in full, and I also received an apology letter from them. Since she is from good parents, I hope she will take care of the child in her belly from now on. Scott, left alone, sold his parents' house and moved to another town. The compensation for me was apparently paid from his father's inheritance. But with compensation due to Mandy's harassment and child support, he might be broke by now. I don't know how he is doing, nor do I want to know. But seeing that child support is being deposited every month, it seems he is still alive and working. It's a shame for a man who finally had the son he wanted. A year after the divorce, Robert approached me. "Won't you come back to us? I think you are needed at the factory filled with the dreams of the previous president." I decided to return as an office worker to the company that continued my father-in-law's philosophy. Welcome back. Being welcomed back by everyone at the company, I was moved to tears. My father-in-law always saw the potential in our town's factory. We are starting new initiatives, developing original products, and responding to requests from individual customers. The factory has returned to the lively place it was when my father-in-law was around. I am also contributing ideas with the craftsmen and participating in the creation of new projects. Mom. I made cookies with Grandma. My 6-year-old daughter, Emma, offered me homemade sweets when I came home from work. Thank you. Yes. They turned out delicious. I am truly glad to have protected Emma's smile. I will continue to work hard to maintain this happy life with Emma.